There's a woman in her 70s living alone in a small apartment in Tokyo. No roommate. No spouse anymore. No children nearby. By almost every Western measurement, she should be a textbook case of isolation, the exact demographic public health officials warn about when they talk about a loneliness epidemic. And yet, ask her how she feels and she'll tell you without hesitation that she isn't lonely at all. Not lonely the way we use that word, the hollow, aching kind of alone that so many people in the West quietly suffer through even when they're surrounded by people. What if the difference between her solitude and our loneliness has nothing to do with how many people are physically around you, and everything to do with a handful of Japanese concepts most Westerners have never even heard of? By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly what separates being alone from being lonely, and how to start closing that gap in your own life. Before we get into the concepts themselves, we need to take apart a quiet assumption almost everyone in the West carries without questioning it. The assumption is this: being alone is inherently a problem to be solved, a temporary state you should be actively working to escape. We measure our social health by head count, how many friends, how many followers, how many people show up to things. And when that head count drops, even briefly, alarm bells go off, not because anything has actually gone wrong, but because we've been trained to treat solitude itself as evidence of failure. The first concept that breaks this pattern is hitori jouzu, being skilled at being alone. The real Japanese term hitori jouzu literally translates to something like good at solo, and it's used as a genuine compliment, not a consolation. It describes someone who has developed the actual skill of enjoying their own company, the same way you describe someone as good at cooking or good at a sport. The practice. In Japan, an enormous and completely normalized industry exists around solo activities that would feel almost taboo to do alone in many Western countries. Solo dining counters in restaurants, solo karaoke booths, solo travel packages, even solo amusement park visits. None of these are framed as sad workarounds for not having friends. They're simply framed as a different, equally valid way to spend time, one that comes with its own particular pleasures. The scientific validation. Psychologists studying solitude have increasingly drawn a sharp distinction between loneliness, a painful subjective feeling of disconnection, and solitude, simply the objective state of being physically alone. Research consistently shows that women who develop what researchers call positive solitude skills, the ability to be alone without distress, report significantly higher life satisfaction and lower rates of anxiety than those who experience aloneness primarily as deprivation. The skill isn't avoiding solitude. It's learning to occupy it comfortably, which is precisely what hitori jouzu describes. The second concept reframes an experience most Western cultures treat as deeply uncomfortable: eating alone in public. The real Japanese term, ohitorisama, literally one person, but used culturally to describe the practice and even the identity of comfortably doing things solo, especially dining. Far from being pitted, a woman who confidently embodies ohitorisama is often seen as self-possessed and composed. The practice. Restaurants across Japan are deliberately designed around this reality. Ramen counters with single-seat partitions specifically built so solo diners never feel observed or judged. Izakaya bars with solo-friendly counter seating. Entire restaurant chains built around the assumption that a meaningful percentage of customers will be eating completely alone, by choice, not by circumstance. The scientific validation. Researchers studying social anxiety around solo dining have found that in cultures where eating alone is normalized and even architecturally supported, people report far less self-consciousness and discomfort doing it than in cultures where solo dining is treated as a visible signal of social failure. The discomfort many Western women feel eating alone in public isn't some universal human truth. It's a learned response to a culture that has quietly stigmatized solitude in shared spaces, and that stigma can be unlearned the same way it was learned. The third concept addresses something deeper than activities, the actual emotional infrastructure that prevents solitude from curdling into loneliness in the first place. The real Japanese term ikigai, your reason for being, the thing that makes getting out of bed feel worthwhile regardless of who else is or isn't there to witness it. Crucially, ikigai doesn't require an audience. The practice. Many older Japanese women living alone maintain a daily structure built around small, personally meaningful rituals, tending a garden, practicing calligraphy, perfecting a recipe, caring for a neighborhood shrine, that have nothing to do with impressing or entertaining other people. The activity itself is the reward. There's no requirement that anyone else see it, validate it, or participate in it for it to feel meaningful. The scientific validation. Longitudinal studies on aging and well-being, including extensive research out of Okinawa, have found that having a strong personal sense of purpose is one of the strongest predictors of healthy aging and reported happiness, independent of marital status or household size. Women with a clear ikigai who live alone often report comparable, or even higher life satisfaction than partnered women who lack one. Purpose, it turns out, does more emotional work than company does. The fourth concept tackles the quiet terror many Westerners feel around unstructured silence. The instinct to immediately fill every quiet moment with noise, a podcast, a show, a phone scroll, anything other than actual stillness. The real Japanese term, ma, the meaningful pause, the deliberate empty space between things that is treated not as an absence to be filled, but as an essential part of the whole. Ma shows up in traditional Japanese architecture, in music, in conversation, and crucially, in how time alone is experienced. The practice. Rather than treating silence and stillness as something to escape, many traditional Japanese practices, the tea ceremony, simple meditation, even quiet contemplation of a garden, deliberately build an unstructured, unfilled time as the actual point of the activity, not an unfortunate gap to be eliminated. Sitting with nothing happening is the practice itself. The scientific validation. Researchers studying constant stimulation and mental health have found that the compulsive need to fill every silent moment with noise or distraction is strongly associated with higher anxiety and lower comfort with one's own thoughts. Studies on mindfulness and solitude tolerance suggest that people who can sit in unstructured quiet, without immediately reaching for distraction, develop measurably better emotional regulation over time. Ma is an empty space wasted. It's the specific space where a woman learns she can tolerate her own company without needing to drown it out. The fifth and final concept may be the most counterintuitive of all, the idea that meaningful connection doesn't require constant contact. The real Japanese term, sometimes described through the broader cultural value of enryo, a kind of respectful restraint, including restraint in how much one reaches out or imposes on others, even people you care about deeply. The practice. Rather than measuring relationships by frequency of contact, constant texting, daily check-ins, immediate responses, many Japanese social relationships, particularly among older generations, operate on a foundation of trust that doesn't require constant maintenance to remain real. A friendship between two women can go weeks without contact and still be considered fully intact, because the relationship's value was never measured by communication frequency in the first place. The scientific validation. Relationship researchers studying social support have found that the quality and security of a relationship, not its frequency of contact, is the stronger predictor of someone's subjective sense of connectedness. Women who feel secure in a small number of deep relationships, even with infrequent contact, often report less loneliness than those with frequent but shallow contact across a large network. It isn't how often you hear from someone, it's how certain you are that the bond would hold if you needed it. As you've seen, the gap between solitude and loneliness isn't closed by adding more people to your life. It's closed by changing your relationship to being alone in the first place. Hitori jouzu. Develop the actual skill of enjoying your own company. Ohitorisama. Let go of the shame around doing things solo in public. Ikigai. Build a sense of purpose that doesn't require an audience. Ma. Learn to sit in unstructured silence without needing to fill it. Enryo. Trust that real connection doesn't require constant contact to remain real. None of these 5 ideas require more friends, a partner, or a busier social calendar. They require a different relationship with the time you already spend by yourself, treating it as something to be inhabited well, rather than something to be endured until company arrives. If this changed how you think about the time you spend alone, share it with someone who always seems uncomfortable with their own company. This has been a look into the psychology and philosophy behind solitude in Japan. Not a prescription, a perspective. If this resonated, hit subscribe so you don't miss what's next. And drop a comment letting us know which of these 5 ideas you're going to try first. We'll see you in the next one.